were here before us, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, they made incredible sacrifices and difficult decisions. And they were different at different times, but they did what needed to be done to ensure that ours remained a special place. Now the time has come for this generation to make the same choice. And it does so in the fastest changing time in perhaps human history. The transformation that's occurring in our economy today is like the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution, except it's happening every 5 years instead of every 50. Literally, cutting-edge industries today are obsolete within 3 to 4 years. Technologies that today are top of the line within 2 years have been replaced by 5.0, 8.0, and 10.0. That's how quickly things are moving. Also, the nature of the economy has changed. It's now a global economy. We now sell to and compete with not just people halfway across town or even halfway across the country, but people all over the world. And we need to be globally competitive. So from an economic point of view, if we want to create more jobs, not just more jobs, but better paying jobs, then we must be globally competitive. Which is why I've always worked hard to ensure that we change our system of taxation and regulation so that we can compete with other countries. Today we are not competitive enough. Not long ago, I had an opportunity to meet with some people who build auto plants. I had dinner with them. And I asked them, why are they building all these auto plants in Mexico? And is it the labor cost? And they said, no, the labor costs are significant. But that alone is not enough to walk away from an existing plant. One of the main reasons why is because if you want to open a plant in Mexico, you can get your permits in about a month. If you want to do the same plant in the United States, it will take you 3 to 4 years. And so I'm not an anarchist. We do want regulations. We want to make sure, for example, that your phone doesn't catch fire. We want to make sure that, but we want to make sure your plane, the person flying it actually is a pilot. But what about when it goes too far? What about when the regulations go too far, you've made yourself uncompetitive? Same with our tax code. Our tax code can't be zero because we have to pay for the military. We have to build roads and bridges. We have to fund the basic aspects of government at every level. But what about when they're too expensive? Well, then people make a choice. They decide to invest their money, make their money, and open their businesses in other places. And today they have more choices than ever. We talked about the need to reform higher education, in particular to create more access. I'm a big believer in dual enrollment. I really believe that young high school students who have decided that they want to fix things for a living should be able to dual enroll while still in high school. They should be able to bring their Pell Grant. And there's a pilot program that's doing this now. They should be able to take their Pell Grant even before they graduate high school and begin to use it to pay for college credit courses. So oftentimes they can either graduate at 18 or a year later at 19 from a community college or a state college, certified and ready to work as all sorts of professions that today are at the cutting edge of what we need in multiple industries. The primary obligation of our federal government is our national security, to keep us safe. And that's the job of the United States military. And today that military is being gutted. It's being cut. These budget cuts are irresponsible, and they are doing nothing to balance our budget. Because defense spending is not the cause of our debt. Which is why I believe the U.S. military doesn't just need to continue to be rebuilt, but it has to stay ahead of the curve. Because we face extraordinary challenges. We are aware of the challenges of radicalism all over the planet, but we also understand the threat of China and they pose as they continue to develop anti-access capabilities, trying to establish dominion in the Asia-Pacific region. We're cognizant of the threat posed by Russia, that while their economy is the size of Italy's, their military is not. And they continue to try to force themselves and become a world power through military force, since they can't do it diplomatically and they can't do it economically. We are aware of the threats posed by North Korea, governed by a certified rabid lunatic, who unfortunately possesses at least a dozen nuclear warheads and the increased capability to launch those even to the shores of our own country one day, God forbid. And these are threats that our military has to be prepared to confront. And in the context of all these threats, I say, well, it's one of the reasons why I chose to run for re-election. If you had told me 6 months ago that I would be standing here as a candidate for re-election, I wouldn't have believed it. I had chosen to try to serve our country as president. And I made that decision, and while it didn't turn out the way I hoped it would, I've always believed that God's plan is perfect, and therefore He had a plan for us, for all of us. And His plan was for me to be here before you today, and hopefully to continue to serve you in the United States Senate. My Democratic opponent, as many of you are familiar, because he's the congressman from this region, although a lot of people have noticed, because in the 4 years he's been there, he literally has done nothing. And I don't say that lightly in a Congress that's done very little. But he's done nothing. He cites 2 things as his leading accomplishments. Patrick Murphy says his number 1 accomplishment is he saved cuts to Medicare Advantage. No, he didn't. Patrick Murphy signed on to a letter with 220 other people That's all he did. He signed onto a letter. If signing onto a letter is an accomplishment in Washington these days, now you know why things are so messed up. The other achievement, he says he got money for the Everglades. No, he didn't. That was part of those projects were designed a decade ago. They would have been in that budget whether or not he would have been in Congress. You may not agree with me on every policy issue, but I've gotten things passed. He's never had a single bill passed and signed by the president. And I've gotten bills passed and signed by the president even when the Democrats were in charge. We passed the Girls Count Act, which says that if you get U.S. foreign aid, you have to change the way you treat girls in your country so they can't become victims of human trafficking. We passed the Foreign Aid Accountability Act, which provides transparency into how our money is being spent. We give a lot of money to countries overseas. We want to know that it's not going into the hands of cronies or corrupt companies. We passed sanctions, not once but twice, not on the people of Venezuela, not even on the government of Venezuela, on its dictator and the people that surround him. We did that on 2 occasions, working across the aisle. I passed sanctions working across the aisle against Hezbollah, the toughest sanctions ever on Hezbollah, to the point that they've actually attacked me and criticized me by name. We did get rid of the bailout fund, and I'm glad we did. It's no matter how you feel about Obamacare, and I imagine many of you are probably against it, as am I, but even if you're not, it isn't right for the American taxpayer to have to bail out private insurance companies, who, by the way, are making record profits. We played a leading role in getting Zika funding done in the United States Senate. In fact, the Senate passed it in May. It got stuck in the House for political reasons. It was an outrage. I blame my own party for that, because a public health crisis should not be a partisan issue. On issue after issue, we've gotten results. The Central Everglades Planning Project that's been stuck for a decade. We finally got it authorized because I was able to convince the chairman of that committee, his name is Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, that it wasn't a slush fund, that it was a worthy project. And we did such a good job of convincing him that on the day he stood on the Senate floor to advocate for passage of the Central Everglades Planning Project, the pictures he had up behind him and a little cardboard thing that he put up were the pictures of the Indian River Lagoon and the estuaries in our state, both east and west coast, and he talked about the algae problems. That is a conversion of epic proportions. In essence, I did more in one day for the Everglades than Patrick Murphy did in 4 years. And so this is a record of achievement. There are other things that we point to. The VA Accountability Act. I wrote it, we passed it. I actually worked with, get this, Bernie Sanders. Oh my God. Which today you can now fire senior executives at the VA who are not doing a good job. And I say that with the highest of respect for the very good people that work at the VA. And if you've ever interacted with a VA system, you know there are really good people working there. And then there are a few people that are not doing a good job and you couldn't fire them. And you know what that got me? Patrick Murphy opposed that, by the way. You know what that led to? The union that represented those people that should be fired spent hundreds of thousands of dollars attacking me and supporting him. But these are the right things. These are not laws that I co-sponsored. These are not letters that I signed. These are bills that I wrote and we passed and I worked across the aisle to get done. Now this is the 3rd largest state in the country. It is perhaps the most important competitive state in the country. It is not a state that can afford to have even one senator that can't get things done and can't be noticed. Agree with me or not, we have been consequential. We've had an impact, despite the fact that 4 of my 6 years, I served in a Senate where Harry Reid controlled the flow of business. And I'll leave it at that. And that's what I want to continue to do. Because I hope 6 years from now, when I look back, I can tell my children who enjoy going out into Florida Bay off Flamingo to fish with me in the Everglades, that the Everglades is being restored and that I had a role to play in it, so that when they take their kids fishing to enjoy the natural beauty of our state, they'll be able to say that I had something to do with it. I want to be there with my kids, along with your kids and grandkids, on that night when an American steps foot on the surface of Mars. And we can say that we had a role to play in ensuring that NASA had the funding and the focus to carry out that mission. This may not seem like a big deal to some people, but I want to be there the day that that aircraft carrier that is supposed to be stationed in Jacksonville at Mayport finally is. Because not only is it good for that region to have that and all the jobs that brings, but it's right for our country. For defense reasons, you do want to spread out where your aircraft carriers are, and you want them to be closer to the Caribbean basin. I want to be the guy that be able to come 4 or 6 years from now and say, I worked across the aisle, and because we did, we passed my college affordability plan, which is realistic. It's a plan that creates alternatives to student loans, a plan that allows people that already have student loans to be able to pay them back based on how much money you make. And why do I care so deeply about student loans? Because I had one. It was over $100,000. And had I not written a book, I never would have paid it off. It is It's available on paperback. It's a good book. New York Times bestseller. I'm starting to sound like someone else. Let me stop. It's a good book. You'll like it. My point is that I knew. Can I tell you guys that when we first got married, Jeanette and I got married, I don't think she knew the full extent of the loan issue. So every month it was like Sally Mae kept taking money out of my bank account. Who's the Sally Mae, and why is she getting so much money from us? That's what I said anyway. And it was the biggest bill. My student loan payment was higher than our mortgage and our car. Wow. But that's what we had to do. That's what I had to do to go to school. I don't want people to have to do that anymore. And it doesn't make any sense to have to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars for a degree that doesn't lead to a job. And so we need to change that too. And so these are things I really hope we can achieve over the next 6 years. And that's why I want to go back and continue to work on your behalf. And let me just close with this. First, I want to ask you to go out and vote. If you've already voted, I thank you for it. Whether you voted for me or not, I appreciate it. I hope you voted for me. But even if you didn't, I want to thank you. We are so blessed to live here. We really are. I want you to know that most people on Earth, the majority of the people on this planet don't get to choose who leads them. They don't. In most countries on Earth, you can't just walk in somewhere and criticize someone who's in power. You can go to jail. Some places you could die. Not here. Here we have that blessing. You might get audited by the IRS, okay? But I'm saying, I'm kidding. It's a joke for the camera. Maybe not. I don't know. But my point is that we have that blessing to be able to do that. We have the opportunity to do that, so we should participate, especially in a state like Florida, where we have so many people who have come from so many different places where that right is not guaranteed. And here it is. I want to run because I think the Supreme Court is incredibly consequential, and the Senate has to confirm the next Supreme Court justice. And this Constitution is the glue that's held us together. We've had bad presidents before. But what's held us together as a republic is adherence to the principles in that Constitution. And if the Constitution means whatever the court wants it to mean, it means nothing at all. The Constitution has to be interpreted appropriately. You can change the Constitution through an amendment, but not through the courts. That has to go through the Senate. But let me close with this. There's a lot of young people, obviously, being in college. The first thing I'd say, I said at the end of the debate, I'm sorry that this is the first election some of you get to vote in. They're not usually like this, I promise you. They're not usually like this. This is one that's been unusual, I understand. But I hope we don't lose hope in the future of our country, because while we have a lot of problems and a lot of challenges, and we always had a lot of challenges, because being special is hard, I still wouldn't be anybody else. There's still no nation on earth that I would trade places with. I know of no other country that I look at and I say to myself, I wish we were them. Look at all we've been blessed with. We are protected on the east and in the west by 2 vast oceans. We have natural resources of every kind. We grow enough food to feed ourselves. We produce enough energy to fuel ourselves. We have the most innovative, creative people in the world because we are all a collection of go-getters, every single one of us. Whether your parents or your grandparents, whether your ancestors or immigrants or whether they were slaves. These are people that overcame extraordinary obstacles to stake their claim in the American dream. This is literally who we are. It's in our DNA. We have this incredible republic, and we can keep it, right? As many of our founders, one of our founders once wrote. And the ability to express ourselves not every 4 years, every year. Local elections at the school board level, at the local government level, at the student government level, all the way up to the federal government. We are blessed. And there is no reason in the world, there is absolutely no reason why we can't be better than we have ever been. There is no reason why the people in this room that are younger...
Excuse me, Senator, I need to know, I have one question for you. Why have you not endorsed President Trump? Why have you not endorsed... This is battery.